Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining us. It's just gone after 11:30 over here in Perth. I'm Nicholas Reid from Reid Corporate, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this investor, shareholder and webinar with Sipa Resources, ASX code SRI, our first for the year. Well, it was a big end to 2024 for Sipa, with the company unveiling an exciting acquisition of a portfolio of high potential Australian gold projects and completing two significant drilling programs. With activity ramping up again and a big year looming ahead for the company in 2025, we're delighted to have Sipa's Managing Director, Andrew Muir, join us this morning. G'day, Andrew. Great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Nick. Always good to be here.
For everyone attending, the format for this webinar is that we'll step through a bit of a Q&A based on the content of the company's December quarterly report, which was released yesterday, before opening the floor to any questions from attendees. So just as a reminder to everyone who's tuned in, please use the Q&A tab on your webinar browser. It's on the right-hand side of the screen there to ask a question, and we'll make sure that we put everything that comes through to Andrew. So let's get right on with it. Andrew, as I said at the opening, it was a big end to last year for the company, with the announcement of a gold acquisition right on the cusp of Christmas. So firstly, run us through that transaction. Where are these new projects located? Who did you buy them from? And I suppose importantly, how much are you paying for them?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, look, we definitely finished 2024 with a bang. December we completed the transaction just before Christmas, two drill programs, plus completed tranche one of a capital raising. So and it was a good effort by all involved, our technical team and brokers, etc., as well as the board to get all of that across the line, given the relatively tight time frame and a lot going on. So look, we had been looking around for new projects for a little while to diversify our asset base, move a little bit away from the northern part of Western Australia. So we've been looking at a range of different projects. We've probably looked at over 20, 25 projects, and this is by far and away the best opportunity that we came across. Highly prospective ground. It's the right commodity, gold. It's in good jurisdiction in South Australia and Western Australia, and we can access this ground all year round. So we're very pleased with how this adds to our portfolio of assets. In terms of the price, so the headline number is $2.2 million. However, that's a combination of upfront and deferred and milestone payments. So the majority of the payments are actually deferred payments, and the vast majority of payments are actually scrip as well. So not too much cash out the door with a view on putting the cash in the ground. And on top of that, the vendor of the projects was Stephen Biggins and his associates. So Stephen has very much put his money where his mouth is, and he's actually coming on the board. So that's a great tick of quality for the projects that he wants to come along for the ride, so to speak, as we add value to these projects.
Thanks, Andrew. And just a reminder, please, to anyone listening in, please fire in your questions as we go, because we want to make this as interactive a discussion as we can. Andrew, Sipa's been an exploration specialist company. It's been around for a long time. It's got a strong sort of track record and credentials as an exploration specialist. And I know that you, as you said, you looked at a lot of assets before you announced this transaction. What is it about these projects that you like so much, and why do you think this is a good fit with Sipa and the way you do things?
Yeah, look, we had I guess a matrix that we were using to assess all of the projects, and the standard sort of things, jurisdiction, sovereign risk, heritage, ability to access them, obviously underpinned by very good geology. What made this stand out, other than ticking all of those boxes, is, look, relative to our other assets, there's an obvious pathway to monetize these four projects. So the three South Australian ones, Nuckaloo Hill, Tunkillia North and Sky, are all close to or within trucking distance of Barton Gold's Tunkillia project. which is over 1 million ounce resource. And the Crown project in WA is not far away from Kalgoorlie, and it's largely surrounded by Black Cat's projects, and it's pretty close to the Majestic area or Majestic Centre that Black Cat is looking at developing. So whilst we can work on these pretty regularly, as I said, sort of all year round, there's actually an obvious pathway to monetize this because we've got existing infrastructure in place. So, and it's gold, of course, which everyone understands. The geology is fantastic on all of the projects. It's relatively well understood. Plus, there's already been some historical work done on all of the projects. Knuckle Hill's got at least 2 or 3 different prospects which have previously been drilled that have had +1 gram intercepts. Tunkilia North has got a very large calcrete anomaly that looks like it's analogous to Barton's Tunkilia. And Sky has got some interesting first pass numbers on it, and it's pretty close to the Challenger gold mine, which was mined by Dominion in the sort of early to mid 2000s and produced over 1 million ounces. So they've all got really good credentials. And likewise on the Crown project, that's largely to have some soil sampling plus a little bit of air core, but we think it's still got a lot of potential to continue that exploration and hopefully find something.
Thanks, Andrew. I might get you to take us into a location map, which is great. But before we get into that, I was just going to ask you a bit more about the vendor and Stephen Biggins, who's joining the company, obviously, as part of this transaction. Stephen's had success with Core Lithium, I believe. Do you want to just paint a bit of a picture about his background and track record for shareholders?
Yeah, for sure. So Stephen has got a really good track record. He's originally a geologist, but and has got some very good credentials, both geologically as well as corporately. So I guess I've known Stephen for quite a long time. Back when I was an analyst, I used to cover Southern Gold when they found the Cannon gold deposit, which is not far away from the Crown project near WA. So I've had a good relationship with Stephen for a long period of time, and he's been a very good geologist as well as sort of project generator, and been able to take companies a fair long way. And Core's obviously the most outstanding example by identifying those assets and then putting them into a vehicle and then taking them to a sort of a +$2 billion company. So he's a great asset to the board. And the other, I guess, intangible aspect to that is he's also got some very good South Australian connections that we'll absolutely tap into, given that 3 out of these 4 projects are located in South Australia. So that'll be a very good asset for us as well.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And look, that's a good map to sort of lead into the next question, because it shows the portfolio, obviously, that you've picked up in South Australia there. And there's a couple of deposits or projects with fairly rich history, one being Challenger, and Dominion had a lot of success there, some decades ago. And I think Tunkilia was one of the early discoveries there with Helix. Talk us through that area, and I guess the current main operator there, Barton Gold, is doing a fair bit, isn't it? So how do you see that all sort of playing out in terms of what you've picked up?
Yeah, the area, the geology basically that underpins this part of the world is fantastic. That was, I guess, when we were looking at our analysis of different projects, that had to be very, very good. There's no point picking ground up if the underlying geology is not very good. So that was really a huge tick for us, given the recent success with Barton at Tunkilia, plus the multiple deposits that have been found in this part of the world, Challenger, Golf Bore. So there's demonstrated sizable deposits in this part of the world. So yet, ironically, large areas of it and in the tenements that we have actually not had very much work done. There's been some sort of initial calcrete sampling and some follow-up drilling, but still a lot more work needed to be done. So Barton is very much leading the charge. They've got the Tunkilia, which is over 1 million ounces, and they put out a positive scoping study on that last year. So that demonstrates that that there is validity to what they're doing. And we've got our Tunkillia North and Knuckler Hill basically straddle that to the north and south. So there's a potential for some obvious synergies there if we hit some reasonable mineralisation. As I said, we've already got gold found on Knuckler Hill from historic drilling, and Tunkillia North has got a fantastic calcrete anomaly that, and for those that don't know, sampling calcrete in this part of the world is a very good pathfinder, I suppose, for looking for mineralisation undercover, and that's been very successful. It's been used for a number of these deposits that I mentioned. So all of the areas that we've got have got some reasonable calcrete anomalies on it that we'll look to follow up.
Yeah, that's interesting, because would you say that relative to, say, a WA Goldfield setting, it's still, this region is still relatively underdone from an exploration perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. When we've gone through the data, we were quite surprised at the lack of work that's been done, given the prospectivity. It is about 7 hours from Adelaide, so we can get access to it, but it still needs a bit of effort to get out there. Access is actually pretty good. You can actually see on that map, you can see that there's tracks sort of going and roads going all around the area. So getting access to there is not a problem. But yeah, absolutely, there's a lot of upside. We think there's a lot of work to do, and we think there's a very good chance of actually delineating some mineralisation. But we need to get on ground to start doing that.
So you're going to be spending a fair bit more time in Adelaide moving forward?
Yeah, so I guess that's one of the things that we are looking at doing. The transaction doesn't complete until early February, so we can't really get on ground and do anything sort of active until that transaction is finalised. But absolutely, and that's where we're going to probably lean on Stephen to a degree, at least initially, until we build up those relationships and networks in Adelaide and work out what's the best way that we can progress the projects, whether we fly in and out, of Perth, because that's where my exploration manager and myself are based, or whether we actually put someone on from Adelaide. We need to have a think about all of those things, but it makes sense to tap into the expertise in that part of the world. It's a very logical thing to do.
Probably a good segue into my next question, which was how far away is the start of exploration on the ground and at the new projects, and also drilling? Can you sort of paint us a broad picture of the forward timeline?
For sure. So as I said, we haven't completed the transaction yet. It'll be completed in tranche 2 of the capital raising and is subject to shareholder approval. So we can't obviously get on the ground because technically we don't own it yet. That won't come until early February. However, we are working around in the background just to understand what work needs to be done in terms of the requirements to get on ground. So obviously heritage, POWs in WA and Peppers in South Australia, understanding who the landholders are. We've already got meetings lined up with the tenement people and legal people, and know who the heritage parties are. So we're getting, I guess, ahead of the game, so we get our head around and make contact and build relationships with all those parties, so we can hit the ground running. So first cab off the rank will probably be geochem sampling on some of the South Australian projects. There's already been peppers put in place for those, so we'll utilise those. And then follow-up drilling at Knuckler Hill and Tunkillia. We'll need to do heritage surveys with local heritage groups before we can get on ground. So again, that's part of the process that we're doing now. So we've got meetings lined up to understand who those parties are and the work that we need to do to arrange those and put the appropriate notifications in place. So the geochem sampling we'll look at doing pretty early on in the piece, and then follow-up air core, possibly RC drilling will be either, we probably won't get it done in time in the first quarter, but we'll be targeting the second quarter this calendar year. So we're very much looking at hitting the ground running. Crown, likewise, in Western Australia, we've got heritage agreements in place on the vast majority of the tenements. So we just need to review the historical geochem and air core that's been done. We've got a couple of sort of preliminary targets that we want to test. So we'll just need to, again, reach out to the relevant heritage parties, do a heritage survey, confirm that there's nothing that will be an impediment, and get on the ground and probably look to do air core. So I would guesstimate that'll probably be second quarter, if not early third quarter. But again, it's all dependent on timing of heritage groups and lining all those parties up. But that's why we want to get in front of the ball, so to speak, and starting to arrange all of those now.
Excellent. So that drilling Q2 is not that far away. Andrew, might we also see some updates from the company in respect of, I guess some desktop work, some historic data that you've got access to, and also just your exploration plans and priorities as sort of interim news flow before you get on the ground?
Yeah, definitely. So we're compiling all the data. Of course, we spent a lot of time doing due diligence leading up to the transaction. And we're now sort of compiling all of that data, putting it into sort of usable formats and undergoing targeting. And as we sort of work through that process, I suppose we'll put out updates on what our work plans are, particularly as they become a little bit more concrete, I suppose, as we start to tick those boxes with the various different parties and can put timeframes in place. So I know that all sounds a bit wishy-washy, but until we have those specific conversations with the right people and start to put timelines in place, we'll definitely be updating people.
Sure. No, understood. Just one final question on the the new projects. The Crown project in WA, is that something you can access relatively soon, given it's, I suppose, in our backyard, so to speak?
Yeah, it's definitely close to Perth, and Anna, my exploration manager, and myself, we're actually looking at heading up there and doing a quick site visit next week. So we'll have boots on ground, so to speak, albeit that the transaction won't be finalised, but we can get there pretty quickly and do have a quick look around it. We've already identified some of the historic drilling, etc., that we want to go check out. So we'll be up there next week. But likewise, we've got some targets. We just need to get the appropriate sort of heritage surveys done, and then submit the POWs to get on ground. So we know the process pretty well. It's just a matter of starting to do that. So again, we're starting to do all of that now before the transaction's completed, so we can get it done as soon as we can, get on ground as soon as we can.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Well, look, well done on getting that acquisition away before Christmas, and it sounds like a pretty exciting outlook for those projects in later this year. I'm just going to take you elsewhere in the portfolio now. So you did do a drill program just before Christmas. You did a good job getting a rig up to the Paterson just before Christmas, given the very hot weather conditions up there. What were you aiming to achieve with that program, and tell us a bit about it? How did it go, and when can we expect to see some results?
Yeah, so we managed to get a rig up there just before Christmas. Unfortunately we're delayed by sort of 1 to 2 months by the drilling contractor, which is a bit disappointing, but that's the nature of the beast sometimes. So once we got on site, both the top drill crew and our guys did a fantastic job. Look, pretty tough conditions, very hot, very humid, isolated rain, and we also had some isolated lightning at various points in time. So, and it's pretty remote. It's about 7 hours out of Port Hedland. So it's a very remote part of the world. So you need to be prepared and put really good systems and procedures and have a good understanding of the conditions. And was a credit to my exploration manager and my geo Dave, in actually executing the program safely. No one got hurt, and it was executed quite well. given the conditions. However, we did have some rain, I guess, come through, so which truncated the program a little bit. So we ended up doing about 1,000 metres of a planned 2,000 metre program. It was RC drilling testing the obelisk prospect, and we're looking at testing some both some northeast southwest structures as well as some north south ones, so which were extensions to the previous anomalism that was identified. It's a big copper gold system, sort of 1.5+ kilometres long that we drilled a couple of years ago, and it was our first program up there, sort of since the program since the project came back to Sipa at 100%. So we completed, as I said, about 1,000 metres. We tested the key structures that we wanted to test, which was really, really good. But then, unfortunately, because we're backing up to Christmas, we needed to get the rig out there, because the last thing we wanted was it to get rained in and stuck over Christmas, and no one really wants that. So we had to make sure everyone got home safely, which was the number one priority. So those results hit the lab early in the new year. So I'm expecting those to get those assays back sort of 3 to 6 weeks, ballpark, of course, because of the Christmas break, when the labs have less people on, the things are a little bit slower. So that's the ballpark timing for those. So really keen to see how they come out.
Excellent. Look, it's an interesting part of the world, Andrew, and Sipa's always been I guess a first mover up there. But there's been plenty of action. I think you've alluded to this on your slide here. It was a bit of a hotbed of activity last year, with lots of transactions, lots of interesting moves happening. Talk us through that, and I mean, what are the possible implications of that for Sipa, given your extensive ground holding and position up there?
Look, it's a very, very prospective part of the world. There's obviously some big players up there with some very big deposits. Telfer's obviously the shining light that's been producing for a number of years now, and of course Winnow's found Calibre and Magnum by Antipa. So there's a lot of work that's been going up there, and I guess, as you sort of said, the last sort of 6 to 9 months, there's been a lot of I guess M&A or transactions that we think will actually start to open up that part of the world. First cab off the rank was Greatland purchasing Telfer, and that's going to allow them to process their Havieron deposit. They'll be able to truck it through there, much more efficient and cost effective than building a brand new mill, particularly given Telfer's getting a bit old and tired, and their mineralisation's getting pretty deep now. So that sort of gives that new project, I suppose, both Telfer and Havieron, sort of kicks them both on and consolidates that ground. Then we saw Rio purchasing Antipa's 32% of the Citadel JV. That was a great outcome for Antipa. It gives them 17 million cash to go on and progress their 100% assets, but it also consolidates Rio's holding up there, which leads into the potential development of Winu. And as you can see there, and as was announced late last year, Sumitomo and Rio have signed an agreement to develop Winu. It'll be fascinating to see how that progresses and what how that development comes about in terms of size of the operation and the timelines for that. And it's interesting to see where sort of Calibre and Magnum fit into that. Time will tell, but what it shows is that there's a lot going on in this part of the world, and even though it's remote and there's a bit of cover there, the size of the prize well and truly justifies being up there and having a crack, because these are the style and the size of the deposits that you can find. So we're still very excited about the potential of the project, and continue to get up there and explore it. So the first thing will be seeing what these results say, and we'll see how we go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Interesting. Just moving elsewhere in the portfolio, and I guess again consistent with Sipa's history, has always been looking for, frontier areas where others haven't been before. You had a crack at a project called Skeleton Rocks as well, just before Christmas, with a drill program. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was our second drill program in December. Much smaller in nature. It was an aircoil program testing the Nicketti trend, where we had some previous sort of nickel chrome, etc., anomalism from last drilling. So this was just a small aircoil program, about 1,000 meters for 13 holes. We tested a couple of the magnetic anomalies there along strike from the anomalism that we previously had. So as you can see, they were drilling in farmers' fields, so we needed to wait for the cropping to be finished, hence undertaking it in December. So that went very, very smoothly. Anna, my exploration manager, she was sitting on the rig, and that got knocked off in about a week. So again, those results will probably be about 3 to 6 weeks away. Again, like the Pat North results, they went into the lab early in the new year. So likewise, it'll be fascinating to see what they turn up. We're again really keen on this, the Nicketti prospect. We think that's got a lot of potential for some really interesting mineralisation.
Okay, great. So another thing to look out for in the coming weeks. Just a quick reminder again, if anyone would like to throw in a question, please jump on that online portal and send them in. Andrew, we'll sort of round things out with having a look at White Terrace, which was the other project that's covered in your quarterly. There have been a few developments there. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so White Terrace is a really, really interesting large-scale sort of concept play, so to speak, over 600 square kilometres. We're looking for Mississippi Valley type lead zinc mineralisation. The Leonard Shelf, which is on the other side of the Fitzroy Trough, had a very long period of base metals mining. Those deposits are found because they stuck out of the ground. However, on our side of the trough, there's roughly 80 to sort of 100 metres of cover which buries any potential mineralisation. So we think the potential for finding similar style deposits, but on the other side of the trough, is outstanding. So, but we need to do a fair bit of work to understand that, and we did some drilling in 2022, some diamond drilling that basically demonstrated proof of concept that there is sniffs of mineralisation in the right host units that we're looking for. So that is a JV, 50-50 JV with Buru Energy, which is an oil and gas company. So a little bit of a novel JV. However, look, as you're probably aware, oil and gas game is pretty tough at the moment. So they are focusing on their Raphael hydrocarbon project. So they're actually divesting non-core assets. So part of that is their entity called Batmin, which is basically battery minerals, which that's the entity that we have the joint venture with. So we're working with Buru on a win-win outcome on that. They've been fantastic JV partners, and ordinarily they would be happy to hang around, but given the nature of their business and they're needing to sort of focus on Raphael, they're a bit disappointed, given that they can recognise the potential of this, but they just need to focus on their existing assets. So they've been great to work with. We've gained some really good insights, particularly with oil and gas sort of technology and analysis through basin analysis and seismic interpretation and the like. So it's been a fantastic working relationship, but given their change of focus, we'll help them do something with their 50% of the JV.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Andrew. Well, look, I appreciate that skips through the key highlights of the projects and the quarterly. There's obviously a lot going on this year. We'll jump into some online questions which are starting to come through. The first one is, how well funded is Sipa to undertake the work that's proposed on the new gold projects?
So we, as part of the transaction, we undertook a capital raising that's in 2 tranches. So we've successfully completed tranche 1, T1, just before Christmas. So that brought in just over $700,000. So that takes our cash, as we said in the quarterly, to about 1.6. And tranche 2, which is in early February, that's going to add just over another $1 million to the kitty, so to speak. So that'll give us, ballpark about $2.6 million. The initial exploration that we'll do on the South Australian projects is, as I said, it'll be geochem, aircore, and maybe a bit of RC. So we'll have a pretty reasonable cash balance in which we can get out and have a red hot crack.
Excellent. Another question here is that how do you see the South Australian projects as having the potential to, potentially deliver resources in the relatively near term?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things. As a geologist, you're very, very wary of putting timeframes on when resources are going to be delineated, particularly because we haven't actually been able to get on the ground yet. But the fact that there is some quite sizable deposits in close proximity, and the historical drilling that's been done on a couple of the projects within Knuckler Hill, Bimba, for example, have got multiple plus 1 gram intercepts over decent width. So look, we wouldn't go into this project if we didn't think there was the potential for these things to be mined. I suppose is holistically the overarching statement. So we need to get in there, do the work, initial geochem on Tunkillia North, and probably go in with some drilling at Knuckler Hill. So those results will be highly guiding at what our next steps are. But aircore or RC on Knuckler Hill will be the I guess first steps in identifying the size of the prize for on those particular prospects. In terms of putting a time frame on the resource, look, it's really going to be results dependent, but we're pretty optimistic. And as I said, we wouldn't go into this if we didn't think that there was the potential for sizable resource base in which to be able to monetize this project, whether it's through us mining it, someone else mining it, or M&A. There's multiple ways that we can skin the cat, so to speak, and that was one of the attractive aspects of these projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I think through the course of last year, you flagged sort of portfolio, streamlining or I guess simplification, and obviously now that you've got a flagship asset, brought into the company. I mean, do you envisage progressing some of these other projects in other ways through partnerships or JVs, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I guess one of the key motivations for looking at or bringing the Crown and South Australian assets in was that we could work on these things all year round. Some of the other projects we've got are definitely subject to seasonality, and they're pretty remote. So these new assets enable us to undertake work on ground all year round and generate news flow and sort of add value, I suppose. So so that I guess means we're constantly assessing where the other projects fit in the portfolio, and there's some natural discussions and natural parties that we can sort of talk to about that may be perhaps a better fit for some of those assets. But it's part of the nature of junior exploration that's sort of the horse trading, bringing projects in, moving them on, etc. We're constantly looking and making sure we have the best and optimal profile, I suppose, and so we can get good bang for our buck with exploration, because it's all about adding value in the most sensible and way and with the least possible dollars, I suppose. So yes, we're still looking at refining that portfolio, and bringing these projects in was, I guess, the first sort of cab off the rank in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. Look, I think we've covered most of the questions. I might maybe we just sort of try and draw it all together for people, and I'll ask you just to sort of encapsulate, the Sipa proposition, the investment proposition, I mean, how does the company look, post this transaction corporately as well, in terms of market cap, shares on issue, cash, etc.? I mean, it's a pretty, given the scale of what you've got in terms of the new projects and also the rest of the portfolio, it looks pretty cheap, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's look, I appreciate, of course, the junior in the town is pretty tough at the moment across the board, but we can't control the market, so we can, all you can do is control what's within your own grasp, so to speak. So for us, it's about doing sensible, smart, value-adding exploration, not blowing up the cash register, so to speak. So we think the assets we've got are outstanding. Particularly the new assets, we've got a very obvious pathway in which we can monetize them. We've got some obvious targets that we want to go out and do test. And if we find something of significance, there's infrastructure that's nearby that we can there's potential synergies for. So given it will have an EV of sort of 1.5 to sort of 3 million, depending on whether sort of share price sits, etc., and cash in the bank, the upside is outstanding. If we find something of substance near Barton's ground or near Black Cat's ground, that can be monetized pretty quickly. Potentially, generate a maiden resource and grow that resource. You'll see some pretty rapid share price appreciation. I'd like to think in a pretty straightforward and very well understood commodity, which is gold, which of course, as we know, the Aussie dollar gold price has been going through the roof. So it's the right commodity, right location, and we're looking at hitting the ground running to explore those assets.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Just on a finishing note, I mean, gold seems to be where all the action is again in the early part of this year. So, and there's obviously a reason for that. I mean, broadly, what's your take on the gold space? And the outlook sort of for this year and beyond.
There's this. As my time as an analyst, I know that as soon as you make a forecast, you're always going to be wrong. But look, I think it's overwhelmingly positive. And I guess just touching on the market, so to speak. Obviously, a lot of dollars is going into the producers at the moment. The super funds and whatnot, because they are able to access that high gold price and make the most of that. However, I think over time and as interest rates come down, etc., a lot of money is going to be looking for where good quality up and coming gold, explorers and developers. And I think we're going to see a really good run in the sort of short to medium term on all the juniors looking to play catch up with all the producers. So we're looking to position ourselves with good quality assets, with good exploration, targeting the right commodity in good locations. And if we're successful, I think we'll be well and truly rewarded by the market. So, we can't control the gold price, but we recognise, look, it's positive. And we've got some good targets, and all we can do is go out there and have a crack and test them.
Fantastic. Well said. Well, look, thanks very much, Andrew. Congratulations on the acquisition as well. It was good to see that all coming together before Christmas. So sets the scene for an exciting year ahead.
Very much so. It's going to be a very busy year, but very exciting as well. It's going to be busy for the right reasons, so which is good.
Fantastic. Well, we'll definitely get you back on to talk about this project as things unfold. So thanks for your time this morning, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. We'll get a replay of this out and about shortly, and we look forward to keeping you informed about Sipa and its progress over the coming months. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, everyone.